Welcome back to West Texas View.
Welcome back to our program today. This is the West Texas View. I'm Johnny Lou Avery. My guest is Stephen Brown, the President and CEO of the Commemorative Air Force. And we've been having so much fun talking about the history of the Commemorative Air Force as its circuitous route that led it to the Permian Basin, and it's been a real blessing to have them here and direct from this headquarters a total network across not only the United States but internationally. And so as we finished the last segment, we were talking about the units, the individual units, and what they did and how they operated. But I want us to talk about some specific aircraft that you have now.
Let's do it. Well, the most famous airplane we operate, which everyone here knows very well, is our B-29 Superfortress Fifi. And there's a lot of questions because Fifi hasn't been flying for the past 5 years. If you didn't know that, we had to go through a total re-engineing of the airplane. We had to put different engines. The engines that they built back in World War II and the Korean era for this airplane were not very durable. It was quickly put into production, and it wasn't designed to last the many hours that we enjoy flying this airplane. So we've gone through a redesign of the engines. We're putting brand new engines on it. We just ran the first one a couple months ago. We're about to put the second one on, and then we look to have her flying by this summer. So the goal, and what you're going to see promotions about, is to have her flying at Air Show 2010 to bring to the reemergence of Fifi into the aviation world. We're very excited about that.
Well, was it, what other planes were in that same era?
Well, I mean, that's the largest bomber, but the B-17 is probably the most famous bomber from World War II. And we operate two of those airplanes. We have one that is in Arizona and one that just got back up flying after an extensive renovation, which was Texas Raiders. And it's in the Houston area. And so it proudly carries the Texas name. So we have those. We have 5 B-25s. And those were the Mitchell bombers that General Doolittle flew off the carriers to bomb Tokyo with, and then had to bail out. So those were very famous. We've got P-51s, which I mentioned. Our first airplane was Red Nose, the P-51. And here's an amazing thing: it was the first airplane we ever purchased, and it's still flying today. It's in Georgia at the Dixie Wing.
Oh my goodness!
And we have 2 other P-51s. One that just came up, which is called the Red Tail.
Okay, I was going to say, was the red tail and the red wing different?
Well, there's Red Nose, and then we got Red Tail.
Nose, okay.
Right. Well, the Red Tail is the airplane that's been put back in service in the markings of the Tuskegee Airmen. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen, if you're not familiar, was the famous African American group that was for the first part of the war was not allowed to fly in combat, but then really through progressive measures they were brought in. They were trained as a separate. They were segregated, I should say, and they ended up flying top cover for B-17s. And their professionalism and their willingness to stay with the bombers and not run off and try to get dogfight victories, became well known to the bomber pilots, and they became requested. So they're put forward this airplane, and it's going to go forward in an educational manner. We're going to put together a big 18-wheel semi that's going to travel around the country with the message of rise above. These airmen had to face some prejudice and the segregation and the desire not to fight for their country, which they so wanted to do, but yet they rose above all of those, with
dignity and grace. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is just fabulous.
It is, and what it's doing is it's going around the country and saying, rise above. That's our program. Rise above the circumstances you're in, because if these men could do it back in World War II under the obstacles they faced, well, then you can do it too. So it's a message of hope and of self-motivation to rise above it. And so we've got that airplane flying. It just got back up flying at Oshkosh. And the really unique thing is the pilot, or one of the pilots, and one of the key pilots for that airplane is a gentleman named Brad Lang, who's a Delta pilot, a Delta captain, but he is the son of a Tuskegee Airman. So his father was an original Tuskegee Airman, and now we have the son of a Tuskegee Airman flying the Red Tail Project airplane. So we're very excited. It's up in Minnesota, but it's going to tour around the country and really tell the story of rising above.
That is wonderful. Well, do you have a sample of every plane that flew in World War II?
We did at one time. We've got close. We don't have all of them anymore. It's a really tough thing to get every single one to keep them flying. We have the largest representation in the world by far, and we have a large percentage. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a high percentage of the airplanes that flew.
Well, I know this because I'm involved with the WASP,
Yes,
the Women's Air Service Patrol, and the interesting thing about it is we set out to get all the planes that the WASP flew,
right?
And that, first of all, it's expensive.
Yes, it is.
And secondly, it's just a really difficult thing to do. And we have a lot of daughters and sons
yes.
of the original.
And we honor the WASPs. We honor them every year, but last year we had a special recognition of the WASPs, and they were just awarded, as you well know better than I, awarded the Congressional
the medal.
Gold Medal, right? And so that's a great recognition of the unsung heroes. The WASPs and the Tuskegee Airmen really are finally getting the recognition that are due. I've seen a great display on the WASP in Florida.
Yeah.
So
great. If you're interested in aviation history, and I am so interested in it, these side stories are just wonderful, and that's what I love about the museum that you have. And so there's so much when you talk about the Commemorative Air Force. It takes in such a broad base of things to talk about, and that's the reason why we had to have a series of programs. We couldn't just talk about it in one 30-minute program like we can a lot of activities. But I also wanted you to tell about the dedication of these people. You mentioned photographers. I didn't even think about photographers.
Sure. Well, it's amazing the dedication of our members. They really, they put their heart and soul in it. No matter their talents, there's a place for you in the Commemorative Air Force, and we welcome everyone to come along.
And you've actually been the president and CEO here for about 3 years?
Well, a little over 2 years now.
And so you're seeing what wonderful support you're getting from this community, and it's just been great.
It's wonderful. We enjoy being a part of the community, and we appreciate all the support that we're given.
Well, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we end this program?
Well, I mean, I'm the Chief Recruiting Officer for the CAF, so I have to say, please join the CAF. Your participation and your money towards your donations towards the airplanes keep them flying. And we're a tax, it's a tax-free
But the
donation.
other thing is you get a lot for being a member.
Well, absolutely. It's all about the emotion. I mean, if you care about these airplanes flying, if you care about educating the next generation about the greatest generation,
that's right.
Then you should come and be a part, because we'd love to have you.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to have you, Stephen. But feel free to contact either me or Stephen or the Commemorative Air Force. It's been such a pleasure to have Stephen here today. We'll see you next week with another program about the Commemorative Air Force. And in the meantime, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us for News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery. This has been a public affairs presentation of KWAB-TV and KWES-TV.